You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
And we are donning our themed outfits. Larkin's
Strange
got cherries. I like the cherry thing. Good reference. And I have an American flag bow tie that just existed in my house.
It's really great, you guys.
So,
in a tank top as well. So it's just the center piece. It is giving Playboy Bunny. You got it. You got there.
And my girls aren't hoisted up enough to be a Playboy Bunny. I should have put on my corset and just been like, hey. That would have been uncomfortable, though. I don't want to do that.
No.
Anyway, welcome to our 4th of July episode, our 250th America's Anniversary episode. I'll get to what I'm ruining in just a second. But first, thank you to Alex, who commented on Spotify on our Computers episode. Alex is German, and they let me know that the first part of this name, which I pronounced Leibniz, is actually pronounced Lie, not Lee. So it's Leibniz.
Leibniz, which I had been saying that wrong the whole time.
Samesies. So thank you, Alex. And then Alex also said, love the show and you too, with a heart emoji. So thanks, Alex. We love you too. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Patreon. Remember, you can follow for free on Patreon, but if you want monthly bonus episodes and on-air shout-outs and whatever other fun bonus stuff we decide to do, you'll want to join our paid tier at $5 a month. We also do random bonus things for our free members as well that we don't post anywhere else. So go join. Don't be shy. Get in the comments. Liven that space up. We would just love to see it. And we're creeps. We know how many of you are listening, and that does not match the number of you following us. So get over there.
Tisk tisk.
Finally, I have a quick personal plug. For those who don't know, I make comedy sketches on social media where I pretend to be in a relationship with Hannibal Lecter. I've done that for like 2.5 years now. And I am writing a series loosely based on those sketches. So original characters, female-driven plot, but same like serial killer rom-com tone, basically. And it's called Meet Cute, MEAT. And we are trying to make it next year. So we've got a site set up where we're currently accepting donations. They're tax-free. It's like donating to a nonprofit. So I will drop that in the show notes. And if anyone feels inclined and wants to donate to that project, I would love you forever. And also just follow me on socials for updates on that. Eventually it'll have its own social media, but not yet. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. We've gotten like some really incredibly positive feedback on the pilot. So I think it's good. We'll see.
Kate's an incredible writer, you guys.
Oh, well, thanks. All right. So as I said, as of the release of this episode, it is one day before America's 250th birthday. Look at us. Here we insist on remaining. Here we are.
Just insists upon itself.
There is obviously so much to ruin about America, much of which we have touched on in the past. We stole land from indigenous Americans. We built a country on slavery. We started the trend of mass incarceration and are still totally winning in that arena. We claim to be a melting pot, a country of equal opportunity, but we've always enacted legislation to restrict those opportunities to people who are not from here. The current administration is actively attacking education, healthcare, the LGBTQ plus community, and non-white communities. We're a fucking mess. But none of that felt quite personal enough for a 250th anniversary takedown. So instead, I'm going after one of our founding fathers, one of the most consistently idealized figures in American history, our first ever president, Mr. George Washington.
Get him.
Content warning, violence, gore, and discussion of slavery, of course. So both of those things also in that context. So Larkin, I know that you already have an idea of some of his problematic elements because you and I both watched that Ken Burns American Revolution documentary, which is excellent and I recommend highly. But growing up, were you taught any of that, or was he like hero of all heroes?
Oh, absolutely not. He's like our Jesus, right?
Yeah.
American Jesus. I definitely grew up being like, he's the best, and yeah. Sorry, that was not an eloquent. He's the guy.
Virtue upon virtue, George Washington. Like, it really is crazy because I feel like I grew up hearing a lot more shit talk about Thomas Jefferson. Like people were a little more willing to be like Jefferson, you know, and like he was, but I think it was partially because it was like, oh, we can't escape the fact that he had sex with his enslaved people. Oh, Sally Hemings, whoopsie, like hard to erase that or whatever. I mean, they could have if they really wanted to, but I just feel like there's more like, oh, Thomas Jefferson, what an asshole. And it's like, if you try to say anything about George Washington, people are like, oh yeah, how dare you?
Pearl clutching starts immediately.
Both of us really liked that moment, and I cannot remember the name of the historian who said this, but in that Ken Burns documentary, who was like asked if he thinks Washington was a great man, and he's like, I'm not really a big fan of great man theory, and I love that. I think I love it. Perfect, because like, yeah, obviously we get into dangerous territory when we hold anyone else as like untouchable, perfect. It doesn't serve us to give people a pass just because they've also done one or multiple impressive things. We are all a collection of mistakes and triumphs and things we've done while at our best and things we've done while at our worst. There's like no balance to be struck between accomplishment and atrocity that is satisfying in any kind of way. I don't like to be a black and white person. I like to live in the gray. I'm like, everyone's kind of good and everyone kind of sucks. But that being said, I do think George Washington was an asshole. And not just like because he owned slaves. We'll get into it. Even some stuff that people are like, wow, what a great man he was. I'm like, that shows to me that he was kind of a fucking dick. Like he was definitely not afraid to work hard, but he was also the beneficiary of a lot of privilege. And I think he just had a lot of like entitlement. He's one of those guys where you're like, yeah, George is a dick, but like he sure does get stuff done.
Shit's getting done on his watch.
You all can decide how you feel about him at the end, whether you agree with me that he's an asshole. But that's my takeaway. And I'm sorry to color your perception right off the bat. But you know, whatever. As I've stated previously, we're not journalists. We're not historians. It's not our job to be neutral. We're just two ladies on microphones yapping about shit. So
try and stop us.
And always fact check us, you know?
Yeah,
these are always fact check all podcasters. None of us are here through any amount of qualification. Anybody can do this. So as you can imagine, there is a bazillion piles of information about Washington everywhere. I don't know. I didn't know where I was going with that sentence. Piles was not the right word, but it's the word that I chose. There are documentaries and biographies out the ass. There's like a new one now, even on Netflix. There's like a new series about presidencies on there. So go to those if you're interested in like the nitty gritty of his military campaigns and like all of his accomplishments. I don't have time to go into all of it, and I am here to focus on the problematic aspects. And so I'm going to give you an overarching bio about him, but we're not going to do a deep dive on the Revolutionary War or his presidency. We don't have time.
No.
So George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732, at least by today's calendar. At the time he was born, his birthday was actually February 11th, 1731. And this is because at the time that he was born, the British were still on the Julian calendar. The year started on March 25th. So to the British, Washington was born toward the end of 1731 because the year hadn't turned over into 1732 and wouldn't until March.
Does that make him an Aquarius?
This is a question that I have. Hold. But then when he was 19, in 1751, the Brits decided to hop on board with the rest of Europe to make things less confusing and adopted the Gregorian calendar. And to do this, they had to shift the new year back to January 1st before his birthday, which meant he was now born in 1732. And it also involved eliminating 11 days from September, which shifted the date of his birth forward 11 days to February 22nd. What a bizarre pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Like, partway through your life, you just are like, I guess I don't know my birthday anymore. Not even the year that I was born. It's all different.
It's all different now. Who am I?
Crazy. Yes. And then I was like, is he an Aquarius or is he a Pisces? Like, what is he? And based on what I learned, I think he's a Pisces, but it's confusing.
I don't want to share my sign with him.
I know you don't. Washington was born on a plantation in Virginia. Great start. The plantation was called Pope's Creek, also known as Wakefield. The British had been in Virginia for over 100 years at this point, so Washington was third generation Virginian from both sides. We know who 3 of his great-grandfathers are, and all of them moved to Virginia in the 1600s. George's grandfather, John, had married the daughter of a prominent plantation owner, and they started their own successful plantation in Virginia, and I believe it was tobacco, because there's mention that subsequent generations of the Washingtons all benefited from tobacco farming, so I think that was the main crop. The Washington family kept expanding, acquiring more land. George was a product of his dad's second marriage. Augustine Washington, George's father, was widowed in 1729, and he had 4 kids with his first wife, Jane Butler. Then Augustine remarried George's mom in 1731, his mom Mary, and they had 6 kids. So George is one of 10.
Jeez Louise.
And he's the oldest of the kids from the second marriage, I believe. So he has 4 older siblings, then it's him, and then he has 5 younger siblings. So he's a middle child, but firstborn of his mom. So I wonder how that changes dynamics.
Oh, it changes it a lot.
Yeah. When he was either 3 or 6 years old, I saw both versions, he and his family moved to Ferry Farm, which was a plantation with at least 21 enslaved people working on it. And this is where he grew up and where he spent his formative years. And it's around this time that a famous myth about George Washington took place, which Larkin's cherry shirt is referencing here. Mm-hmm. George, it is said, got excited about a present that he had gotten for his 6th birthday. And that present was a hatchet, which is a wild gift choice for a 6-year-old.
Crazy gift choice.
The realest thing about this myth is that 6-year-old George took the hatchet and went apeshit and wound up damaging his father's prized cherry tree. Sounds about right. Don't give hatchets to 6-year-olds.
Yeah, any age child. Why?
Right. I'll say it. Don't give hatchets to anyone under 25. Like, maybe wait for that frontal lobe to develop before we start handing out the hatchets.
Hard agree. Maybe just refrain until you're a fully developed human being. Be giving out hatchets willy-nilly. Again, especially as a gift. Like, happy birthday. Here's a violent implement.
Picture a 6-year-old. I wouldn't give that kid a hatchet. Are you kidding me?
No.
Anyway, George, little 6-year-old George is like, woo, new hatchet, starts swinging it around like crazy because that's what a 6-year-old would do with a hatchet. And he damages his dad's cherry tree and his dad is pissed. But George confesses immediately and says, I cannot tell a lie. I did cut it with my hatchet. And George's dad is so proud of his virtuous little honest son that he gives him a big hug and says that his honesty is worth more than 1,000 trees.
Oh.
It's one of those great man myths, right? It's all about he could never tell a lie, George Washington. Not a deceptive bone in his body.
Mm-hmm. Nary. Also, isn't cherry like the hardest wood? Are you like...
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not up on my hard versus soft woods. I'm sorry.
Like cherry is really tough.
That sounds right to me.
Just a mega strong 6-year-old.
George Washington's superhuman strength. So this myth was first written by one of Washington's early biographers, Mason Locke Weems. And Weems wrote and published the book after Washington's death. And it seems he did some embellishing because this cherry tree myth doesn't even appear until the 5th edition of the book. So he's zhuzhing it up each time. Yeah. He's like, what else do I need? Because he, like many other people, are capitalizing on Washington's death. Because when Washington died, people didn't really know that much about him. And so people were just like, oh, this great man has died. I must know everything. And so all of these biographers were kind of scrambling and competing to get these biographies out about him with varying degrees of reliability.
Sure.
And you might have heard the version where George fully chops down the cherry tree. That's what I always heard. You have to really put an effort. Like the accidental damaging as a 6-year-old and then being honest. I'm like, that's kind of a cute little pure story.
Yeah.
That feels right. But like, why the fuck were you chopping it down and you knew your dad loved it? Like there's something else going on there. That's
some dark shit. Also, a 6-year-old with a hatchet is not for chopping down an entire tree.
No, I don't know how else the myth evolved. It just it kept evolving.
Sure.
Because it was republished so many times and in children's stories and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the chopping it down is much more dramatic. It just, to me, evokes a lot more psychological issues.
Of course. Yeah. Malice.
Yeah. And maybe there was malice or maybe it was a loving relationship. We just don't know much, if anything, about his relationship with his dad. So you can't really prove or disprove the myth, but the context of the book feels sus. Most likely it's a total fabrication. George's dad died when George was just 11 years old. So his mom, Mary, was in charge of everything. She never remarried. She just stayed in charge and apparently managed to keep the farm afloat during economic ups and downs, thanks to slave labor, obviously.
Right.
His father's death meant that the land got divided up among the male children, which it sounds like didn't happen until George was 18 in 1750, so 9 years after his dad died. George's older half-brothers got better land and most of the enslaved people. George got some okay land and 10 enslaved people. His mom got 5 enslaved people and control over George's inheritance until he was 21, which honestly in this time is old. Like, that's kind of nuts. Also, inheriting human beings is nuts. I don't want to gloss over that.
No.
George's dad's first wife was 30 when she died. And in the article that I read about it, it was like, might seem young, but that was pretty standard back then. I'm like, so when you're 21, you're like, I might be dead in 9 years. Time to like spend this inheritance. So while George's older brothers had been sent off to school in England at this place called the Appleby School, George now couldn't afford that education. But he was diligent about learning, and he had some private tutors, and he might have also attended a local school. We're not totally sure. He studied reading, writing, and basic legal forms. No idea.
Sure.
Contracts? I don't know.
Tort.
Interesting. He also studied manners, which he took very seriously, plus trigonometry and geometry, which he needed to become a land surveyor, which is what he wound up doing, though it was not his first choice of career. George had some relatives, including his older brother Lawrence, who were encouraging him to join the Royal Navy, and George really idolized Lawrence. Lawrence was in the military himself. He was kind of the man that George looked up to after their dad died, because Lawrence was, I think he would have been 24 when their dad died, so he was already an adult man, and he was like the male role model for George. Practically dead himself at 24.
Seriously, almost done.
Actually,
Oops.
kind of, for in his case. So George pitched the Royal Navy idea to his mom when he was 15, and she considered it, but she wrote to her brother to ask what he thought, and he was like, is he fucking nuts? Like, being in the Navy sucks, and being a planter is cushy as hell. He's going to be so much happier, and he's already set up to do it. Like, he's set up for success. No. And so Mary refused to give George the necessary permission to join the Royal Navy. So he was like, fine, I'll be a land surveyor. Lawrence, the older brother, was very well connected through his wife, Anne Fairfax. Anne was from Fairfax, Virginia, named after her family. So that's who we're dealing with here. Yeah.
Okay.
Lawrence's connection to Anne and the Fairfaxes meant that George benefited from an influential social circle as he grew up. And Lawrence's various accomplishments in his career were also putting the Washington name in very favorable light. And George is able to leverage all of that into opportunities as a land surveyor, and he starts making good money. When he was 16, one of his surveying trips led to his first encounter with American Indians, and it's nothing major. He just kind of like notes it in a journal that he kept. He would have many more significant encounters with them later, unfortunately, but that was just kind of a passing thing. He also did not warm to the Dutch in this time. The trip was in Pennsylvania, where the Dutch had a huge presence to the point where residents in some areas only spoke Dutch. I kind of touched on this in my Sojourner Truth episode. She grew up in a Dutch county in New York. Yeah. Dutch was her first language. And George was like, fucking speak English. Like, literally. He's that guy. He wrote in his diary that these people were, quote, as ignorant a set of people as the Indians. They would never speak English, but when spoken to, they speak all Dutch.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Gives you a little hint of his vibe.
Ew.
You know? He's also shit at grammar because there were no commas in that. This is what I'm talking about. Right from the start, I'm like, I don't care for you, sir. Snob. The next year, when he was just 17, he was appointed the official surveyor of Culpeper County, and he worked pretty much constantly for the next 2+ years. Washington became a landman through and through, and he developed an interest in land development to the west that would last his whole life. And put him at odds with the native nations who are already occupying that land. It would also put him at odds with the British, who were imposing a lot of restrictions on developing the land and were initially reserving it for the native nations. Obviously, the British weren't doing this for the sake of those nations. They were maintaining a strategic peace while they developed ideas for what to do with the land. At this point, Lawrence's health took a downturn. So yeah, 2 years, 2 years, I'm telling you, 26. He's 26, I think. He had picked up tuberculosis while serving in the West Indies, and it slowly worsened over a long period of time. So he went to England to try and get help, and then he went to Barbados with George. I think it was like, take the sea air. It's better for you.
Something like that, yeah.
Thing. While they were in Barbados, George was exposed to smallpox, and that made him immune for the rest of his life. That wound up coming in handy when smallpox started tearing through the camps in the Revolutionary War. And it, I think, is also part of his great man myth of like...
He lived through the smallpox and he was immune.
The troops were falling around him, but Washington stayed healthy and whatever, yeah. In 1752, Lawrence succumbed to his tuberculosis. Lawrence was the owner of Mount Vernon, a very nice property that would later become Washington's iconic home. Mount Vernon passed through a few hands via inheritance until eventually it landed with George in 1761, so 9 years after his brother died. Washington friggin' loved Mount Vernon. He was actually living there for a while before he inherited it. He was renting it from the relative that owned it. He increased the size of the estate until it was over 8,000 acres, which is like 12 and a half square miles. Yeah, just over 20 square kilometers for our non-American friends. He was very into farming. He was very involved. He was like in the nitty gritty about crop rotation and like livestock management and all of that stuff. And he was good at it. That's the thing that keeps frustrating me about him. I'm like, oh, but he's competent. Oh, damn it. Makes me mad. His profit margins were, of course, very much helped by the fact that 90% of the workforce at Mount Vernon were enslaved. When 90% of your labor is free, you can turn a nice little profit. So by 1760, he had at least 49 enslaved people. As with Christopher Columbus, Britannica got a little dick sucky for me about George Washington.
Britannica?
Yeah. They're basically like, he owned them, but like he didn't like it. And he wanted abolition. Later, he said that he did, even though he didn't come around to that frame of thinking until much later in his, like after the Revolutionary War. And even when he did come around, he did fuck all about it, pretty much.
Yeah,
like,
he didn't do
basically
anything
nothing
about it.
He did one thing that people hold up, but it's nothing. We'll get into that later.
I got the vibe that he did it to save, he was more like saving face, kind of.
He also expressed it in some like private communications and stuff. So like, I don't think he was necessarily not like genuine and maybe coming around to seeing more of why it was bad. I don't think he ever fully grasped how horrible it was. Practicality is his whole thing.
Yeah.
And so he is like, sure, it'd be nice if slavery wasn't a thing, but like that's not practical. And so you're like, okay, so you're not really grasping.
No, you're not.
How
like,
horrible this is.
It's not an
atrocity.
empathetic.
No.
A coming
response
into the world or like some sort of epiphany or realization. It's like, well, the times are changing, so I got to kind of get on board, kind of, even though I don't think it's pragmatic.
Right. And he's like, as we'll see, he comes around to this after spending a lot of time with one of his enslaved people during the Revolutionary War. So it's like, I can buy that maybe he was more like, saw them more as people, but I don't think he ever was like, well, they're this, like, he can't possibly have been like, well, they're the same quote unquote level of person as like me. Like they're,
and he
they're
was
still
raised
lesser people
that way. Like he was raised owning, as a child, owning human beings. That's like, that changes your psychology from the get.
Absolutely. Britannica also was like, and guess what else? He wouldn't sell his enslaved people from Mount Vernon because he didn't want families to be broken up, which is true. He didn't. But he also didn't free them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So he didn't break up families. Well, he could have let them go.
Especially when you learn that because of this refusal to sell anyone and break up families, he had a huge surplus of enslaved people. He didn't need all of the enslaved. He had like 300 something. He did not need all of those people on Mount Vernon. He could have set some of them free. Like he could have. And I think that he also expresses some things other times where he's like very calculated about fairness. And so I think there he's like, but I can't just let some of them go because that's not fair to how do I choose? Like... So I'll just keep all of them. And it's like, it's held up as this like, look at what he did. They wound up getting broken up anyway for reasons we'll see in a little while. You're like forcing 300 people into more and more cramped, shitty conditions.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went. I'm like, okay, do you have the space and the facilities for that? And
he did not.
It just seems like totally unnecessary cruelty.
It is. It's always presented as trying to redeem him. And I'm like, it makes it worse for me. Recognizing that they're human enough that you don't want to break up their families, but you're not going to unenslave them? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Absolutely not, Britannica. I love you still, but we're fighting.
I'm not even mad. I'm just disappointed.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
It's been a couple times, too.
Building on reasons to hate George Washington, he enjoyed fox hunting.
Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Go straight to hell and fight me.
On brand. He's a dick.
He's an asshole. Anyone who does that, literally, I will fight in the street.
Seriously. And I think he just has this like, what will save me time, what will make me money, not just himself, what will save the country money. What will, you know, like he's a practical thinker, and he's cold because of it.
Yeah.
Like he just has this ability to detach selectively from someone's humanity,
Right.
as it serves him.
Which makes for really good leaders, but not for necessarily compassionate or healthy leaders.
Exactly. And I'm not going to throw out any diagnoses here, but I think he struggled a little bit with empathy.
Sounds like he freaking did.
He's a lot like Hannibal. Honestly, he is.
Yeah.
He's like moral compass that's his own kind of moral compass that is like very but he abides by it very strictly. He's ambitious, he's smart, he's well respected. He even copied, like I said, he was very into the manners portion of his education. He copied down a list of rules of civility that was very important to him.
Okay.
I'm just saying. George Washington is not dissimilar to Hannibal Lecter.
Just food for thought.
Washington was a skilled horseback rider. He's good at a lot of outdoorsy stuff. He was tall, especially for the time. He was 6'2", and his commanding presence helped him rise through the ranks of his local community. 1753 marked the start of Washington's legendary military career. He started as a major, leaning on his connections. Yes, correct. Leaning on his connections. To be clear, he had zero military training or experience at this point. He's a 21-year-old land surveyor, but hop on into the Virginia militia as a major. It's fine.
Go right ahead. You're tall.
You're tall and bossy, and we like it. And money. You're making money.
You make money, and you seem to be a little bit of a psychopath, so that works for us.
That's going to be great for us. Also, his experience as a land surveyor, because land surveyors were going out and they were kind of assessing landscapes. They were like, this is good for farming, this is good for, so you needed a lot of like skills in assessing the land, and they were like, that could be very handy in navigating the land.
It was like, wasn't he like, based on the Ken Burns, is like he was just masterful at being like coming up with plays, like because he was
just
like
look
that
at the
hill,
land. Yep. Yes. So he does have that skill. I don't want to be like, he's got nothing going for him, because he winds up being good at it,
really good at it. Yeah.
Quite famously. France and Britain at this time were fighting over a big ass territory known as the Ohio River Valley. This is the 7 Years' War that's happening between France and Britain. And Washington immediately volunteers to be the emissary to the French from one of the British leaders, even though he doesn't speak French. This is the entitlement I'm talking about. What makes you feel like you were the best person for this job? White man energy.
What aspect? What aspect of it at all? But he's just going to be like, speak English, dum-dum.
Well, no. What he does is he then has to spend money on an interpreter, because you can't just be like, speak English in war negotiations. What he wants to make the jump from the Virginia military to the British Army. So he's just grabbing any opportunity he can to like distinguish himself. So yes, he has to hire an interpreter. He also hires someone who can speak some of the native languages, because he doesn't speak any of those either, obviously, because he's like, fucking speak English. And he doesn't know their customs. He hasn't bothered. And he grabs some woodsmen, and then he goes to tell the French to get the fuck out or they'll be attacked. And the French were like, no, we're not going anywhere.
My dick.
So Washington goes back and lets the British know the French aren't going anywhere without a fight. And then he has to go recruit more militia members, and he finds this really tough. He's having trouble finding like competent soldiers and enough supplies for all of them. Some foreshadowing for the Revolutionary War here. But he scrapes some troops together. He leads a couple of campaigns with mixed results. And in 1754, some reorganization of Virginia's military was done, and he was offered a regular commission. So he's got like, I think he's basically like a contractor at this point. He's got like kind of a one-off commission. I might be totally wrong on that. If anyone knows military shit, please let me know. But he's being offered a regular like permanent commission as a captain, which is a lower rank than major. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to take a step down. So he refused the commission. He resigned his command, and he went back to farming. This is another theme for him. He's like, I'm out.
If you're not going to give me what I want, I'm out.
So the British leaders eventually decided that militias weren't going to do the trick against the French. And so in 1755, they sent some British Army folks to push the French back into Canada. And Washington was invited to be part of General Edward Braddock's company. And he jumped at it, because he was like, this is the first time I can actually serve in a conflict with an experienced officer, a real British officer that I can learn from. It's going to be great. Unfortunately, their company was hit with an attack and General Braddock died, got killed. The attack was conducted by the French and the American Indians. And so while the broader war was called the 7 Years' War, the conflict specifically in the north in the Ohio River Valley became known as the French and Indian War, which is where Washington was. I never knew that before. The French and Indian War is like a subpart of the 7 Years' War.
I didn't know.
I wouldn't have been able to tell you where the 7 Years' War took place.
No.
So Braddock dies and Washington steps up and organizes the retreat, which again is kind of like, why do you think you're the person to do this? But somebody's got to. Someone's got to figure shit out in the moment. And that was something he was pretty damn good at. And he did save lives. He organized a successful retreat. And like, yes, this is like the push and pull that I have with him. He's not like Charles Boycott, who's like shit at everything and just keeps getting handed opportunities despite that. Like, he's competent.
He's competent. He's good at what he does and is very type A and is like, well, I don't have any experience in this, but I know I can do it. Move out of my way.
Yeah. Why not me?
I can do it.
I can do it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it keeps working for him. So I kind of get it. I'm like, I have a little bit of that in me.
Yeah.
But I just think that it's like his competence and success is like what shields him from scrutiny about the problematic aspects of his times.
Which, as you said, is like something dangerous. Is a dangerous road to follow. Like, and we do it with our quote unquote heroes, you know, their marble busts on plinths.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is like, it doesn't feel like there's an in-between. It's like either he's a hero or he's canceled. Right.
We're human beings. There has to be like an in-between spot.
Yeah. He's a very problematic man who did a lot of horrible, horrible shit, who also accomplished things. Whether those things were things that we think should have happened are a question also.
I'm feeling more and more no, but here we are. Here we are.
I don't know about it either.
Nothing we can do about it at this point.
Anyway, Braddock dies of his injuries. Washington is worried about his corpse getting desecrated, so he has him buried immediately under this road that they've built, and then he has the men run over the burial site with wagons to disguise it so that no one can dig him up and desecrate his corpse, which is partially considerate and partially kind of cold.
Yeah.
But again, practical.
Yep. Get him in the ground right now.
After this, Washington is offered a command by the British, and he accepts. So now he has to recruit again, and it's a pain in the ass, just like it was the first time. And he gets really mad because there were laws that exempted middle and upper class people from military service. And he's not mad because of the inequity, of course, as ever. He's not mad for any humanitarian reason. It's the practicality, because it reduces the quality of soldiers that he's able to recruit. And so he's constantly bitching to leadership in Virginia to let him have better soldiers. He is very frustrated with his men. He finds them lazy and disorganized and unreliable, which honestly, they probably were. And I feel for him on that one. Like, that would suck. And you're like, they're going to die because I can't, like, literal deaths.
Literal deaths on my hands, on my watch, because these bumbling buffoons can't get their shit together.
They're going to die, and even worse, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
He's also struggling because the local settlers in the Ohio River Valley are not pleased with the British coming in and starting shit. They had been living pretty peacefully under the French. Settlers in Virginia are also being attacked more by indigenous Americans who are trying to take advantage of the chaos to maybe get some of their fucking land back. And speaking of, the French generally had better relations with indigenous Americans than the British did. The British were scrambling for more alliances, but they had already done some fuckery around some treaty stuff with the Iroquois, and the Iroquois and others were concerned about the British coming in and taking more of their land. Rightly so.
Yeah.
Part of the French's advantage was that they had established themselves in the area much earlier, and they had different motives than the British did. So the British were interested in land. They wanted agricultural shit. They wanted to grow stuff. The French were interested in fur. In the early 1600s, they had formed alliances with the Hurons, the Algonquins, and other nations as well in order to access the fur trade in the Midwest. And the French and the American Indians wound up blending their societies. They lived alongside each other. They intermarried. They engaged in robust trade with each other. And unlike other colonizers, the French didn't give a fuck about converting the American Indians to their religion. They were like, be Catholic or don't. We don't care. So their communities got super intermixed. And they had several generations of that already going on. I also want to acknowledge, of course, that the French did partake in a lot of slave trading of American Indians, they also introduced guns, alcohol, and contagious diseases to their communities. But since the colonizer bar is in hell, far below the floor, the local nations generally figured the French were the lesser of two evils.
They also had boarding schools.
Oh, the French? Oh, yeah.
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 Theirs were some of the worst.
Great. Good to know. There we go. Added.
Added to the list.
I didn't get that far forward in the timeline. Yeah. But anyway, the American Indians in the area did a lot to help the French out, including reporting to them on British troop movements. So in 1758, about 3 years into the war, the British are finally winning. And at this point, Washington decided he'd gone as far as he could go in the current military structure. Once again, he resigns his commission. He's ready to move on. He's gotten a seat in the House of Burgesses, which was a body of elected representatives in Virginia, kind of like a state Congress. He had also gotten engaged to Martha Dandridge Custis, a widow who was a year older than him. She was 27 and he was 26. Or no, she was 28 and he was 27 when they got married.
A hag.
I know. But she had been widowed, so already. So
right.
That
So she wasn't
legitimized
a hag. She was
her
just
singlehood. Yes.
a single lady.
An very eligible widow. She had very good standing in society. She was born into a decent family, and then she married up. So she is high in Virginia planter society specifically. And Washington's like, I'm going to go back to farming and fuck my new wife. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Oh, Martha.
Oh, Martha. I can't wait to hear.
Martha is literally what I have written in my script, and you said it, and I love it so much. She was also born on a plantation in Virginia, and she had grown up as well with slavery as a part of her life. And she was an even more casual slave owner than George was. She never came around to the idea that they were people, really, it seems. Here's a direct quote from a letter Martha Washington wrote to her niece, Fanny Bassett Washington, in 1795. Quote, "The blacks are so bad in their nature that they have not the least gratitude for the kindness that may be showed to them." End quote.
Come on, white bitch. Like, I know that's rich coming from a white bitch, but I like saying it. Martha's
a piece of work, to say the least. More to come on that.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just,
piece of
as
shit.
you've said over and over again, as we've both said, she was probably in a standing where she's like, I'm tough, I'm cool, I'm smart, I should be in charge of shit. I'm not. There are these people below me that I can kick while they're down and also make inhuman because I don't feel like I'm being treated as to the full extent of my humanity. So let's punch down because I'm a horrible, stupid cunt.
Pretty much. There's Martha Washington for you. So George never said anything that I could find that was quite that inflammatory, but there is a recorded exchange between him and his farm manager, Anthony Whitting, which is quite telling. So Whitting wrote to Washington about an enslaved person named Charlotte who had apparently been insolent. Allegedly, she had he had hunted a hog and she wanted an extra spare rib or something.
Insolence.
And he didn't give her one. She showed up and started giving him guff about it. Apparently she threw the rib that she did have at him or on the floor or something. I don't know. He's claiming she threw a fit about it. And so he whipped her with a switch. And the next day she was sent some work and she sent it back and didn't do it. So he whipped her again. And then she said that one of the blows had hit her finger and it was swollen and she refused to work and she threatened to tell Martha. Martha was on a trip or something. And she was like, I'm telling Martha when she gets back. I haven't been whipped in 14 years. This is bullshit. So Whitting is writing to George Washington, back me up, bro. Whitting wrote, quote, "Fully expect I shall have to give her some more of it before she will behave herself, for I am determined to lower her spirit or skin her back." End quote.
Oh, fucking.
Yeah. And Washington replied, "Your treatment of Charlotte was very proper, and if she or any other of the servants will not do their duty by fair means or are impertinent, correction, as the only alternative, must be administered." So he's like, yeah, whip away. How dare she act like she's a human with rights? At this point, I'm going to hop out of our biographical timeline and I'm just going to tackle the slavery shit.
Okay.
So we're going to move forward through we're going to move forward through his life and then we'll come back. As already established, George Washington owned a bunch of enslaved people at Mount Vernon. I will link a database in the show notes that lists all of them. Many of them have the same names as each other, and most are known only by their first name. When multiple people had the same first name, they would add a letter to the end of their name to identify them. For example, there's Barbara A, Barbara B, and Barbara C. Literally just labeling them A, B, C, D.
Great.
There is Beck A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. There are Bettys all the way through Q. And of course, lots of Georges. We have first and last names for some of them, though. There's Frank Lee, who was the Washington's butler. George bought Frank in 1768 for 50 pounds, along with his brother, William Lee, who would serve as George's longtime valet. I had to look this up because I was like, is it valet or valet? It is valet. And valet apparently was some kind of fun little, like, we just decided to get fancy with it at some point. Frank was an essential member of the Washington household in charge of making sure the family and guests were well taken care of. He was organized, efficient, and damn good at his job, getting many compliments from visitors. He married into one of the biggest intergenerational enslaved families at Mount Vernon when he married Lucy, who was the daughter of the estate's longtime cook named Doll. Doll and Lucy were part of a line of enslaved people who were brought to Mount Vernon as part of Martha Washington's dowry.
In a dowry.
A dowry. Just wait. Their dowries, their inheritance, their, as we will see, wedding presents.
That I have to stop my experience in this life now.
Yeah, that's a Martha move later. She's going to give people presents, as we've established on prior episodes. Don't do that. Don't give people presents. That's not cool.
We're not doing that.
So Doll and Lucy are part of the Custis slaves, is what they're called, because they came from the Martha's Custis estate. Their descendants were also part of this line, and so the ownership goes by matrilineal line. So basically, if one of the Custis slaves had a child with one of the enslaved people who was owned by George Washington, if the Custis slave was a woman, then that child would also be owned by Martha and not George.
Interesting.
But if the Custis slave was a man, this child would be George's, to my understanding.
Okay.
And this gets important later, but basically they have two separate categories of enslaved people, one owned by George and one owned by Martha. William Lee, aka Billy, was Washington's valet for about 2 decades. He did everything for George, from tying ribbons in his hair to organizing his papers during the Revolutionary War. He kind of got some celebrity status for his service during the Revolutionary War because he was like the man to the man, right?
Right.
So Billy was in close quarters with Washington for the 7 years of the Revolutionary War. And as I mentioned earlier, it's during this time that Washington's alleged change of heart happens about slavery. So he started leaning more, apparently, in words toward abolition. Billy was his guy.
That cognitive dissonance is just wild.
Absolutely fucking wild. Billy was married twice, once to an enslaved woman at Mount Vernon, and then once to a free Black woman named Margaret Thomas, who had worked at Mount Vernon during the Revolution. His first wife passed away, and then he met Margaret, and they got engaged and got married, and Washington agreed begrudgingly to bring Margaret to Mount Vernon because apparently he didn't like her. I don't know. He was like, ugh, I didn't want to see her again, but fine. That's probably part of it, yeah. He's probably like, she's going to start influencing ideas of my...
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, actually. Great point.
That's kind of what I thought.
There's no evidence she actually lived at Mount Vernon ever, so it's possible she died before she arrived. But poor Billy, 2 wives.
Yeah.
In the 1780s, Billy sustained several injuries that severely impaired his mobility and resulted in him having to wear leg braces. And he wanted to keep serving as Washington's valet, but it just became clear that it was not practical. He was sent back to Mount Vernon as the cobbler, and he was replaced as valet by Christopher Shields. Shields was a waiter in the Washington household in New York while Washington was president. And when the capital moved to Philadelphia, oh, this is going to make you so mad. When the capital moved to Philadelphia while Washington is president, already, post-revolution, he is the president of the United States. He's allegedly had this change of heart about slavery, and he's like, abolition would be great. Shields is one of a number of enslaved people that Washington would rotate through the household in Philadelphia to avoid a law that stated that enslaved people who could claim 6 months of residency there could be free and could claim freedom.
Yeah, so it was all just blowing smoke up other people's ass. He did not... I knew it. I knew it.
Oh, and he knows it's wrong because he's doing it under the table. He commands his secretary to do it, quote, under pretext that may deceive both them and the public.
Yeah. Yeah, so there it is.
That famous honesty.
Famous honesty showing itself, deceiving the public.
The word deceive both them being the enslaved people, and the public.
Suck a fuck.
And it's like, you know what you're doing is wrong.
Obviously you do if you're using the word deceit.
You studied basic legal forms as
You
a
know
child.
legal forms. You know the forms
You
of
know
the law.
you're not supposed to just circumvent state law by finding little loopholes and workarounds. Fuck you.
The very first president of this country, which is supposed to be the paragon of presidency and leadership and honesty and rule. And look at what he did. Nothing has changed. Nothing is different. We were built on lies and deception, and it's trash. And we should all feel bad about it.
Yes, we should. That's kind of funny because my line that I had in here was like, it's been a corrupt office from the start. Yeah. Like, it's never been this pure, like, oh, there was a time when presidents were honest.
Remember the time? Yeah, I love Obama for sure. And I wish he was back. He didn't do.
Do I think he told the truth about everything?
No,
Fuck
he
no.
didn't do some. He did some great things, but he also did some really
He did some
fucked
terrible
up
shit.
things.
So in 1799, Christopher Shields married a woman from another estate, which Washington approved, but then he found a letter detailing the couple's plan to run away together and escape. And it's unclear what happened after that. We don't know what consequences Christopher or she faced, but Christopher was not demoted. He stayed Washington's valet, and he was one of 4 enslaved people in the room when Washington died. So he wasn't kicked out of the club. I don't know. We don't know what happened. Other enslaved people at Mount Vernon actually managed to escape. Ona Judge was born at Mount Vernon in 1774. She was the daughter of Betty, who was a seamstress on the estate, and a white tailor that Washington had hired, Andrew Judge, was her father. Ona's light complexion helped her land a role as Martha Washington's personal maid at age 10, and she was also a skilled seamstress like her mom. Ona was 15 when Washington became president, and she was one of those people rotated through in Philadelphia. And while she was there, she was given money and some time to like go do what she wanted and run around the city. She started meeting Quakers who gave her some ideas about freedom and the possibility of escape. And she starts kind of forming a little network in Philadelphia. The Washingtons were getting ready to head back to Mount Vernon from Philadelphia on May 21st, 1796. And Ona had found out about plans that Martha Washington had to give her as a wedding gift to Martha's oldest granddaughter, who was known to have a horrible temper and be horrific. Ona knew that if she went back to Virginia, she was going to be a slave forever. And so while the rest of the household was packed up, she packed her things and decided to bolt. And she didn't have a plan of where she was going to go. Kind of spontaneous decision, but she'd made some connections, as I said, in the community. So while the Washingtons ate dinner, she escaped. And she wound up getting on a ship and heading up to New Hampshire. And she did not reveal the name of this ship's captain, which was John Bowles, until after he died, because she never wanted anyone to go after him for helping her.
Wow.
Yeah. Ona's solid, dude. Like, fucking great. What a badass. Martha and George were furious. They were like, the betrayal.
Right.
Right.
Oh.
Like, she was Martha's like, she was my maid, my personal person. I can't even believe it. George is pissed because Ona belonged to Martha. And so he has to now reimburse Martha's estate for her being gone. So they have people everywhere looking for her. And a few months into her time in New Hampshire, Ona was spotted by another of Martha's granddaughters who tattled back to the Washingtons. And they hired a local customs collector to find her and try and convince her to come home. Like, they're not like snatch her off the street, but like try and get her to come back. And Ona was like, okay, I'll come back on the condition that you free me when you die. And Washington was like, what? Incensed by this. And he wrote to the collector, quote, "To enter into such a compromise with her as she suggested to you is totally inadmissible. For however well disposed I might be to a gradual abolition or even to an entire emancipation of that description of people, if the latter was itself practicable in this moment, it would neither be politic or just to reward unfaithfulness with a premature preference, and thereby discontent beforehand the minds of all her fellow servants, who by their steady attachments are far more deserving than herself of a favor.
Fuck you.
I'm cool. I'm like kind of coming around to abolition and like maybe even full emancipation. Maybe if it was practical, maybe. But like other people would deserve to be freed first anyway. So like I can't just do that, man.
I couldn't. That's unfair because you are unfaithful. And
That just sums up Washington's entire thing for me.
yeah, it really does. And what did he say? That people of that type?
Emancipation of that description of people.
That description of people.
Yeah. Those
Like
people.
those
You
people. What do you mean? What do you mean?
You people.
You
Yeah,
people.
that's-
Yeah, that just sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's
he's
your
like,
hero.
Sure.
That's your hero,
Yep.
folks.
Like, sure, maybe we could end slavery, like, eventually. And I think that would
Eventually,
be
and
nice.
I might come around to it. I kind of am already,
But just freeing everyone is so inconvenient.
it's really inconvenient. And
just-
all at once, like that's going to be a mess. And also
Right.
you
What would these poor landowners do
you
with
leaving
their
them in
land?
the lurch.
Pay people to
Ew.
cultivate it?
Yucky.
The very thought.
The very
they'd
thought
sink.
makes me queasy in my little tum-tum.
Thanks to a law that he signed during his presidency, the Fugitive Slave Law of 1793, Washington had the right to retrieve own a judge by force across state lines, but he knew that a violent capture would not look cute to his northern constituents, so he was like, don't do violent shit, but like, go get her.
Grab her.
But the guy wasn't successful. And in 1797, Ona got married to a free sailor named Jack Staines. They would eventually have 3 kids together. 1799 marks the last effort that Washington made to get Ona back. So Martha's nephew, Burwell Bassett Jr.,
Ugh.
was in New Hampshire on business. So Washington was like, hey, go get her. And he instructed him not to do it in a way that would be, quote, unpleasant or troublesome. And Bassett was like, sure, wink, wink. And then he was like, nah, I'm going to take her by force. And he announces this plan while at dinner at the house of the senator for New Hampshire. And this senator is named John Langdon. And John Langdon is like, well, fuck that. And he sends a secret message and warns Ona Judge that this guy is
Hell
coming for
yeah.
her. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, I love it when dum-dums spill the beans.
Oh, and I'm sure Burwell he's grown up the same as
Oh.
the other Washingtons, where he's
Yeah.
just like, we all love slavery, right? I mean, come
Right?
on, right? Like,
I
it's
haven't
the
met-
best. And
Anyone who doesn't.
it's going to be a gas when I just go snatch this woman. Thank you, John Langdon. I want to
Yeah.
learn more about him. Poor Ona, her husband's at sea, and
no.
she has a 1-year-old kid, and she gets this news that a man is coming to violently capture her and
Yeah.
take her back into slavery. Can you imagine how fucking stressed you would be? Like,
I can't.
you have a 1-year-old. You can't tell your husband he's gone. Like, I don't know how if she has any method of communicating with him on the ship. Like, if she's like, well, I just have to go and leave word, and then hopefully get word to him later about where the fuck I am.
But there's no choice. You got to go. You got to go now with an
And you gotta
infant.
go. So she manages to get a carriage to the home of her friend Nancy Jack, who was a free black woman, and Bassett. Old Burwell Bassett was foiled, so he didn't get her. And after George and Martha died, the family didn't go after Ona anymore, but the threat that they could always hung over her. And
Yeah.
she never regretted her escape, though. She died free in 1848. Yeah, Ona.
Yes.
And then, of course, there were the famous dentures.
Yes. Let's talk about these dentures, man, because that was my first introduction to like, oh, like that. I think that was like the first, like, you know, as like a teenager, you're like the fact of George Washington's slave teeth like started spreading around and then started opening my, and I wasn't surprised at all.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I mean, I could have guessed that he was a shitbag, but
He was the president of the United States. Of course he was.
of course he was a dick.
There was the famous like old story that he had wooden teeth. He did not. He had dentures that were made from a mix of human teeth and ivory. We don't have a trace of the teeth in his dentures to any specific people or anything like that. But there are financial records that indicate that enslaved people were being paid to have their teeth pulled by the dentist who gave him these dentures. So, and just because they were being paid doesn't mean they weren't coerced, obviously.
Of course.
Or forced.
Or forced
Yeah.
without anesthesia, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely not. And he's not, paying white dudes for their teeth.
Sure ain't.
Who doesn't need all of their stuff? Who's like, yeah. It's just
Yeah,
another
right.
example. of
Another example of like, well, they don't need
dehumanization.
all of
Like,
their
pay
teeth.
them for it.
Yeah, we paid them,
But-
we compensated them for parts of their body that are theirs and belong to them and are part of their existence. But it's fine.
For me and for my and put them
me.
through a bunch of pain. Yeah, it's this like just like half acknowledgement of them as people. That's all. That's as far as he ever gets.
Yeah, very.
Maybe not even half.
Maybe not
Quarter.
even half. Just like and it kind of seems like a sociopath's way of pretending to be a person.
Right. He's like, some people are saying I should care about this.
So maybe I should pretend to care.
But I don't think he sees many other people as in the same way that we see other people either. Like, I honestly don't think he has full empathy. I think
No.
he's very capable, even with like white people. We'll see later too. Like, he just is like frequently inconvenienced by having to like accommodate human needs. He's like, what the fuck? After the Revolutionary War was over, after his alleged change of heart, Washington ordered the return of runaway enslaved people from the British. 17 people from Mount Vernon actually had managed to escape with the British when the acting manager at Mount Vernon had given the ship some supplies on threat of destruction. The ship was like, we're going to blow you up. And he was like, okay. And the enslaved people took the opportunity presented by this interaction with the British to get on their ship and leave. Then Washington was like, the war's over, give them back. And the Brits were like, no. Which is what they did with a lot of, he ordered like the return of all of these like runaway enslaved people. And the British had promised enslaved people who fought for them that they would free them. Washington very much wanted them to go back on that, and the Brits would not. The British refused to give these Mount Vernon slaves back as well. Some of them they helped to escape, but unfortunately 7 of them were recaptured and brought back to Mount Vernon. Their names were Thomas, Frederick, Frank, Sambo, Lucy, Esther, and Gunner. The Brits did manage to get some of them out. Okay, so Washington's will is what is held up by his admirers as evidence of his dramatic change of heart toward abolition. They're like, he says all this anti-slavery stuff in these letters, and then he frees his slaves. But he spouts all this anti-slavery stuff at the start of his will, and then he does free the enslaved people that he owns, but only when Martha dies. Because he's like, well, she needs to be taken care of. Even though he had an excess of enslaved people when he died. And he's making his will very close to the date of his death, by the way. 6 months before his death, his will was signed, which means he has this excess of enslaved people already. But he's like, well, but Martha will need some, so I can't free mine until she dies. There was one exception. There was one enslaved person who was freed immediately upon Washington's death, and that was Billy Lee, his longtime valet. He also provided him an annual allowance for the rest of his life of $30 a year. Like I said, he was like, Billy's my guy. But Billy stayed on the Mount Vernon estate until he died, presumably because his family was still there, because none of them were free. So
fuck, right? Fuck. The dissonance again.
His entire social circle is there. Like, where's he going to go?
You're free now. Cool. What do you want me to do with that? I have the option of leaving this fuckery, and I can't take my people with me?
Yeah, like your whole family, your whole life is there. You can't take your family with you? Fuck. And plus, as I mentioned, George didn't own all of the enslaved people at Mount Vernon. Martha owned some of them. And so he had no ability to free the Custis slaves in his will. And Martha had no interest in freeing them. She did free George's enslaved people early. They didn't have to wait till she died. She set them free in 1801, apparently out of fear that they would kill her since she was now the only thing standing in the way of their freedom. So she didn't do it for them. She did it for herself.
She did it for herself. Fucking bitch.
She retained ownership over the enslaved families that she had brought into the marriage, meaning that some of the enslaved people at Mount Vernon were free, some weren't. Those two groups were intermingled by marriage. So in one family, you might have a husband who's free and a wife who's not. This complication got more difficult when Martha died, and then those enslaved people that she owned were willed to these various relatives all over the place. And like this was the case for Frank Lee, the butler. He was freed by Washington's will. His wife, though, was owned by Martha. So she wound up going to one of Martha's granddaughters after Martha died while he's free. And so Frank wound up staying in Virginia also to be near his wife and his family at their new plantation. Because, again, what's he going to do? And then like Christopher Shields and Carolyn Branham, they were also owned by Martha, so they weren't granted their freedom for not wanting to break up families.
Yeah. Yeah, that
what did you think was going to happen?
And you're not stupid, as you have shown. You know the rules. What about the children? Like the children who
It goes through the family line, through the maternal line.
Yeah, so they're passed down to the granddaughter or whatever, and so they're trapped in it too, still?
Yeah.
Fuck.
So,
I mean, just at this point. Like, I know that's like at this point because they're supposed to be freed upon Martha's death, like, but they've been passed down to another family, so...
Well, no, her slaves were never going to be freed. Washington's slaves were supposed to be freed on Martha's death. Martha's enslaved people don't have any, they're never getting freed.
If they're girls, they're hers.
No, if their mom was
If their
hers,
mom was
they're
hers, they're hers. Right.
Yes. So back to our timeline. In 1763, after the 7 Years' War, the British enacted something known as the Proclamation Line, and this was a boundary running along the eastern continental divide in the Appalachian Mountains, and British American colonists were prohibited from settling territory west of the Proclamation Line. The British were reserving that for native nations, but really for themselves.
Right. Under the auspice of reserving it for native nations.
Right. They're also concerned that allowing settlers to expand west would afford those settlers too much economic independence and let them start trade in agriculture rather than just producing goods for the crown, which is all the colonies are doing right now. They're farming all of this stuff and it's going to Britain and the other colonies. So like Britain is just using America as its own little farm.
The farther they branch out, the less control you have.
Exactly. They're trying to keep them contained. They're like, if these people start farming and making money and trading with each other, they might also start trading with other countries. And fuck that. That like could ruin our economic position. We're not doing that. The Brits were also facing an uprising from a whole bunch of indigenous peoples. The Ottawa, Delaware, Potawatomi, Shawnee, Mingo or Seneca, Wyandot, Ojibwe, Huron, Choctaw, Piankashaw, Kickapoo, Tunica, Peoria, and Mascoutin. These nations were rightly pissed because it was clear the British were going to keep trying to acquire more of their lands. And they also discontinued the tradition of gift giving that the French had had with these nations. So the French were respecting their traditions of gift giving, and the Brits are like, it's a waste of money. We're not doing that, which was hugely disrespectful. So these nations were like, well, we're going to go ahead and wreak some havoc on your settlements. And they did for 2 years, and they frankly handed the British their asses. The conflict wound up being a stalemate, but the British were not well off in that fight. And the Proclamation Line was an attempt to ease the conflict, but it was seen by colonists as a restriction of their freedom, which it was, as well as just like lip service to these rebelling indigenous nations. And it was not well received by George Washington, and maybe marks the start of his split with the British. This is because his land interests were affected by the policy, so he's losing money, so he's mad. Washington's attitude generally toward American Indians was that they should assimilate or be eliminated. More on that when we get to his presidency. The British are passing more and more restrictive policies against the American colonies, and the colonists are getting pissed. And again, if you want the nitty-gritty about all the lead up to the Revolutionary War, go check out that Ken Burns documentary or any number of other sources. I'm sorry I don't have time for it here. But in 1775, the war is on. George Washington is nominated by John Adams to be commander-in-chief of the newly founded Continental Army. Washington fought in 17 battles during the Revolution. He won 6, 4 more were a draw, which means the Brits won 7. But hey, he won the war, so you know. And honestly, the amount that he won is impressive, considering that he was dealing with a lot of the same issues he was having before when he was trying to get the militia together. A lot of rebel soldiers weren't experienced in battle. They were poorly supplied a lot of the time. During the winter in Valley Forge, 2,000 of his 9,000 soldiers died of starvation, exposure, and disease. Washington wrote to like every state and was like, hi, what the fuck? We need help. Supplies. Congress. Hello. Washington also viewed camp followers as a burden and a hindrance. And these were like women and children who were sometimes married to the soldiers. Sometimes they were just refugees from surrounding areas that had had issues. And he and other officers were very concerned about their soldiers being distracted by lewd women, you know.
Of course,
Even though these women were acting as like nurses, they were washing uniforms, they were mending things, they were they were cooking, you know, they're pulling their weight.
But they have boobs.
Right, and they're just extra people whose needs have to be taken care of, and Washington is highly disinterested in that. He also didn't love it when he saw black soldiers camped by the white soldiers. He didn't want black soldiers in his army to begin with. When he became commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, he had banned black soldiers, some of whom had already been serving. He reversed this policy after 2 months, but only allowed free black men to serve, so enslaved people were prohibited. The British, meanwhile, as I mentioned, were promising freedom to enslaved people who came to fight for them. So,
Right.
you know.
If you're low on men and you need help, you're gonna still be a bitch?
Yes.
Yes,
you are.
the answer is yes.
Because you don't view them as people. They're money.
Right.
They're dollar signs to him. They should be working fields and not dying here. That's a waste of money. Okay, I know we have come so far and we've just hit the revolution and we haven't even gotten to his presidency, but we've got this. I really just want to talk about one more big thing in the revolution that's ruinous. The Sullivan-Clinton campaign, or the Sullivan expedition. When the revolution broke out, American Indians had decisions to make. Some of them wound up divided by the war. Obviously, the rebels were not fans of Native Americans, since one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence was that King George had, quote, endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions, end quote. That's in the Declaration of Independence.
And that's fucking rich because we were killing their kids and their women and raping them and starving them.
Mm-hmm. Fuck. Yeah. How dare they? Uncivilized. Yeah. We should have let Nicolas Cage keep the Declaration of Independence and start it over. The Cherokee and the Iroquois were both split between support for the rebels and support for the British. Two nations in the Iroquois Confederacy, the Oneida and the Tuscarora, sided completely with the rebels. The Iroquois Confederacy consisted of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee people, and these are the Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida, Tuscarora, Onondaga, and Mohawk nations. They are known collectively as the 6 nations. So if I say 6 nations, that's who I'm referring to. In 1778, members of the 6 nations were conducting a series of raids with the colonists who were loyal to the British. And they were really fucking shit up in New York and Pennsylvania. They were disrupting tons of settlements. And by 1779, they were essentially choking out the Continental Army by depriving them of food and supplies. And in response, George Washington ordered Generals John Sullivan and James Clinton to go to the 6 Nations territory and destroy their ability to wage war on the rebels. The campaign was directed particularly at the Seneca, Cayuga, and Onondaga nations. Washington's directive to his generals was, quote, the total destruction and devastation of their settlements and the capture of as many prisoners of every age and sex as possible. It will be essential to ruin their crops now in the ground and prevent their planting more. He also wrote that, quote, the country may not be merely overrun, but destroyed, and added, quote, you will not by any means listen to any overture of peace before the total ruin of their settlements is effected. Our future security will be in their inability to injure us, and in the terror with which the severity of the chastisement they receive will inspire them, end quote. So he was just like, burn it the fuck down. Scorched earth.
Scorched earth.
Yes.
Their children, their food.
And prisoners,
Any
prisoners
overtures
we can
of
get.
peace? Any overtures of peace? The fact, I keep going back to it, the fact that we ever go the good old times when America was great. Make America great again. Never once has there been a time.
No.
That's all. I broke a pen.
Oh, you broke your pen.
It exploded.
So mad you broke a pen. I'm so sorry. Was it a good pen?
Yes.
Oh, no. So he wanted all of these prisoners, by the way, to hold as leverage so that the nations would continue to behave. This was really prioritized. Washington gave Sullivan and Clinton a massive chunk of the Continental Army to do this. 3 brigades of men were dispersed. British leaders refused to listen to both American Indian and white scouts who were reporting this growing mass of soldiers because they just were like, the Americans aren't going to do it. They're not going to prioritize that. No way.
Yeah.
Whoops. The campaign started with 2 villages in the Onondaga Nation, which were burned to the ground. The 3 brigades then burned and terrorized their way through more nations. Per Sullivan, they burned 40 settlements and hundreds of acres of crops, orchards, and stores, including an estimated 160,000 bushels of corn. Another general destroyed 165 houses in 11 Delaware and Seneca settlements along the Allegheny River. Washington earned a name among these nations that is variably translated as town destroyer, town burner, or town devourer. Oh, and some of his men skinned the bodies of Iroquois warriors from the hips down and made boot tops out of their skin.
Because of course they did. But they're not the savages.
The Sullivan campaign didn't actually wind up yielding many, if any, prisoners, so that plan at least went to hell. It did also serve to piss off some of the nations who had remained neutral to this point.
Yeah.
And
I wonder why.
yeah, drove them to side with the British. They were like, okay, well, fuck you. So in 1780, bigger and more devastating raids picked up again. But the campaign did force the British to take on a large number of Six Nations people who were now, had no homes and were left without resources. And the British eventually found that unsustainable, and they just abandoned the Six Nations people. And when the peace treaty between the Americans and the Brits was signed in 1783, the British made zero provisions for the people who had supported them so robustly during the conflict. And as a result, the Six Nations people were at a massive disadvantage against the newly formed United States after the Revolutionary War. For a few years after the U.S. won the war, it was in organization mode. States had to figure themselves out. A system of government had to be devised. In 1788, Virginia ratified their constitution, and Washington was like, okay, that's it. I'm out. I'm going back to my farm. Bye. But in 1789, the first presidential election was held, and literally everyone was like, George for president.
Right.
And he was elected in a landslide. So he was like, well, fuck, I guess I'm going to be the first president of the United States. God damn it.
God damn it.
So, yeah. And he's inaugurated at Federal Hall in New York on April 30th, 1789. Or he's like, fuck yes, of course it's me.
I think, he probably was like, oh, but I wanted a farm. And he's like, no, really?
Don't make me sing.
Don't make me sing.
Just continually wandering toward the piano. Don't make me sing.
Don't make me sing.
And then whips a microphone out of his purse. Yeah. As I mentioned, it was during his presidency that he secretly rotated enslaved workers out of the Capitol in Philadelphia to avoid them being able to free themselves. He also avoided the issue of slavery publicly and never enacted any policies to end it. As I also said, the treaty ending the revolution hadn't had any provisions for ownership of American Indian lands, and so Washington was left to navigate that. He signed various treaties with various nations, allegedly allowing them control over their lands, but of course, these treaties provided basically no concrete protection for them whatsoever or recourse if settlers invaded the lands anyway, which they did constantly. So the American Indian nations would attack settlers to get them out of their land, and Washington sent out troops to fight them, but they were outpowered twice. Outpowered is not a word. Overpowered is what I meant to say, but sure. I like outpowered. It works.
Outpowered. I got it. Which I'm sure Washington loved because he's good at losing.
Not happy about it, I am sure. The Creek Nation really freaked him out because they had signed these 3 treaties in the 1780s with America. The Americans and the Creeks had very different understandings of what those treaties meant for the amount of land that the Creeks were getting. So the Creeks thought that they were getting a lot more land when they signed this. They were probably intentionally misled. I didn't read that anywhere, but...
Oh, I'm sure. That happened over and over and over again.
Right. Or even just carelessness about having a decent interpreter present in negotiations could have been that too, that they were like, we got the gist, whatever. Although, I mean, at this point, I'm sure many of the Creeks spoke excellent English, but so they're pissed. The Creeks are pissed. And Washington invited Alexander McGillivray, who was the leader of the Creek Nation, to talk to him in New York. And McGillivray was joined by 28 other chiefs of the Creek Nation. And in the summer of 1790, they went to New York to negotiate a new treaty. And this was called the Treaty of New York. And it did return some of the land that was taken away in the prior treaties, but under the condition of assimilation. Give up your religion, give up your ways. And as ever, the treaty did nothing concrete to protect their interests. So American settlers kept spreading west anyway. And by 1796, Washington was like, well, you know what? I can't really stop it. So I'm just like, not going to try.
Good luck, everybody else.
In his second term as president, he did appoint agents to specifically handle relations with the American Indian nations. But we all know how well everything has worked out for them. So an article I read in the Tribal College Journal of American Indian Higher Education describes the Washington administration's policy as, quote, expansion with honor. So like basically expansion is the priority. They'll try and do it peacefully, but they'll do it violently if they have to. With honor until you make us be dishonorable. You make us, quote, quote. Yeah. It's like every freaking narcissist abusive relationship. That's exactly, that's all it is. That's all it is. Just you think I like macro scale. Yeah. Do you think I like doing this? Do you think I like murdering your children and stealing your leg flesh for my boots? Just assimilate, and this all could. It's your fault. Away. It'll go away. The easiest thing in the world, and you just won't do it. Yep. It's your choice. I could vomit all over myself. After returning from negotiations with Washington in 1792, Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant stated, George Washington is very cunning. He will try to fool us if he can. He speaks very smooth, will tell you fair stories, and at the same time want to ruin us. Cherokee Chief Bloody Fellow summed it up in fewer words, saying, General Washington is a liar.
What? Yeah.
And his full quote is something like, Congress are liars and General Washington is a liar.
That man is a liar.
After his second term as president, Washington went back to Mount Vernon and got into distilling whiskey, which I'm going to leave there because I think we're going to have a guest who's going to talk to us a little more about that, actually, at some point.
Okay, cool. But it just sounds like the midlife crisis of, you know what, I'm going to do craft beer in my basement.
Yeah, no, it's just like in the shed constantly. And
Yeah.
Martha's like, God damn it, he's out there making his Pilsners again.
Son of a bitch.
George Washington died suddenly at Mount Vernon in 1799 at the age of 67. He had been helping to plan the relocation of the capital to the banks of the Potomac, and eventually that capital would be named after him, Washington, D.C. He became one of the most widely revered figures in American history, known for his tactical abilities, quick decision-making, and measured language. Did the man get shit done? Absolutely. Was it shit that should have happened? Debatable.
Strongly debatable.
Happy 250 years of bullshit.
Hooray! What was that anecdote from the child that like was walking past his house?
Oh, the child. Yes, Darby Vassal. I did originally have this in my script, but I took it out for time. But yeah, there was a kid named Darby Vassal who was at like a house that Washington was coming in to occupy, I believe. I can't remember where it was. And he was swinging on the gate and hanging out. Washington wants this kid to do something for him. And the kid's like, well, I'm free, so what you going to pay me? And Washington was very affronted by that response. He was like, how dare you?
So appalled that and then later that person like wrote a really scathing, I can't even remember what it was.
I want to look up because he did. I feel like Darby Vassal did have a good quote. Yeah, Washington was, quote, no gentleman wanting a boy to work without wage.
No gentleman. That's right.
Yeah. George Washington was a liar. George Washington was no gentleman. These are the things.
And those are the facts that you are taking away today. You have listened well. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
For educating us all and fueling my ever-seething rage.
I wanted to give everyone some good, fun, ruinous facts to throw out at your 4th of July barbecues. Go be ruinous to others. Go forth and spread
the cheer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just be the fun light at the party and remind them about Gaza and remind them about Palestine and remind them of the detention centers where babies are getting sick and dying. You know, keep it light.
Standard America shit. Yeah.
Happy birthday, America. Girl, you are messy and you are a hoe.
Yeah. But we love you, and that's why we get mad at you. We
exactly.
love you, and we know you can be better, which is why we're so mad.
This is why we're upset and mad at you, because there are people here that are good and they're worth protecting.
Yeah, you got some really cool stuff going for you, but you just pepper it with so much bullshit. It's a little tough to remember all the cool shit sometimes.
And you can unlearn bullshit. That's the thing, America. You started
correct.
off, you were born with some real issues, okay? Mm-hmm. You were born in a bad way. But you can unlearn those things. It is possible. I don't know how we're going to help you, but
you've done some of it.
You've done some of it. We're regressing a little bit right now. Mm-hmm. I would like to propose now we should get some like bright colored hats in a different color scheme, because those red hats are just really alarming.
Yeah.
Also, can we stop wearing the made you look hats? They're really triggering and it makes a space feel unsafe. Let's stop wearing those, even as a joke. As a joke.
Anytime I see a red hat, I'm automatically very tense.
Exactly. And think about entering a space like that, like a queer space or like any space really. And people are immediately alarmed. Anyway,
especially people who are like, because I'm like, it makes me like tense, but I'm not afraid. Like,
right.
Because generally MAGA people aren't going to be mad at a white lady, but like other populations that you're like, I am at risk from that person very, very possibly. Like seeing that is not a joke. The word triggering is not Larkin's not using that loosely.
I'm not. Like, I know, and I hate overusing therapy words, but
therapy talk.
But like that is for real. It triggers people. It triggers me in just that like I'm looking around the room like, who do I need to protect right now?
Right.
So stop doing that. But the only reason that came up is because I was like, we should have hats that say, "Make America Great for Once."
Ooh, I like that. That's so good.
We should make them.
Yeah. I haven't written down any quotes from us in a minute. It's been a few episodes. I need to get back on this. I've been slacking off.
Yeah, you slacking. That's why you have
Slacker, Kate Bridle.
an affinity for George. You see yourself in that.
There is a lot, actually. I had quite a few moments where I was like, fuck, I almost like you because I relate to you.
Yeah, it's just like what that guy said. He's like, do I like him as a person? I don't think so. But as a man, he seemed to do some pretty powerful shit. He did. He led people
Yes,
and
unquestionably he did.
One of the biggest, most historic things ever in human
but it's like,
history.
But that thing was war.
That thing was
also,
war.
Like, it's,
Yeah.
You know, like he's not, I don't know. You know, it's the white narrative anyway of just like, because really, if we think about it in the larger context of everything that's happening here, you're like, that's not a nation worth making. Are you kidding me? Like to preserve slave practices and like, I don't know. And to just continue to steal more of it from the people who are already here, who do not want you here. Like,
who were caught in the middle of this bullshit. We showed up and then we start killing them. And then we have a internal fight with colonizer daddy, and so they're caught right in the middle, like, I just want to live. Can I just live?
Yeah.
And we're making
like,
this
no.
huge mess. No, you're not, because you're not people.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh yay, the start of America. And you're like, why are we happy
But why
about it?
do we have to do that?
Like,
because God said so.
This white guy won against that other white guy for territory that didn't belong to them in the first place. Cool. Like,
let's make a baby and call it America, and it's fucked up. I think you did great. That was so much information that you had to, but it was trackable and very. It's long, but that's something. But yeah, that's warranted for this topic.
So many of the things that were so telling to me about him weren't even the big things that everyone already knows about. He felt like the best guy for every job that he showed up for, which to me reads as a level of entitlement. And then like his collection of just different quotes and the way that he handles things and the way that he deals with people and human needs. It is this consistent theme of like, because he cares so much about manners, maybe because he doesn't understand like he's not reading people maybe well initially.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh, these are the rules that will help me get along with people. I need that.
Yep.
And so now I'm in my head, I'm debating whether it's like I want all these rules because it helps me understand society and helps me like be a better member of society, because he was very like manners specifically were his thing, and he seems like locked in on that as like but that's the rule. Is it that and a sincere like, well, this is what I believe, you know, kind of like framing, but then also like he seems to violate those things in just like basic logic of like how he treats non-white people and even some white people too, of just kind of like snobbery and like dismissiveness. And he seems rude in a lot of contexts. I can't decide if he's taking those and he's using them to manipulate very intentionally and using them to blend in that way, and he just doesn't care about people, or if it's like a coping mechanism, like trying to figure out society thing that's sincere from someone who maybe is genuinely trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And just doesn't get it. And is like, but here's what should be, this is the best thing to do in this situation. I don't understand why we're not doing it. And that's practical and that's not practical. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
But he shifts and he's but he like gets so deceitful about things.
Yeah.
That I'm like, he's very like self-serving. Mm-hmm. I get narcissist vibes a little bit too. Which is what I'm more inclined toward, honesty.
Yeah. Happy 4th of July, y'all. Enjoy
Happy
those
4th of
fireworks
July.
and those
Yay.
hot dogs. Shove a wiener in your face.
Happy 4th of July. Shove a wiener in your face. Just like George Washington.
No. Well,
maybe. We don't know. Maybe your research on Sam Adams will turn up something very interesting.
Let us hope.
Make sure that you are registered to vote. Make sure that you are making sure other people in your lives are registered to vote, because for whatever reason, we still have the fucking Electoral College that's getting its own episode one of these days whenever I feel like doing that. Probably actually for November. That'd be a perfect November episode. I'll do that.
It would.
Good.
And
anyway.
I'm letting you do that because I'm not touching that. We have a 9-foot pole. All right, you guys.
Okay. Go vote. Go be good citizens. We love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.